is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on SUBSTACK. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. So, how's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Well, I'm doing good. Everything is good here. Yes, I'm prepping for anybody that's wondering. Yes, I am prepping from the Halloween show. Never too early to do that. I've got a few ideas popping around in my head besides the normal stuff that you see out there. So let's see. It's going to require a little bit of research, like all things. But yeah, because we comment that Halloween's changed so much. What was it? A couple of guests ago, we were talking about, because we were in that same age group, how much fun Halloween used to be for families and kids, and for kids. Yes, yeah, you always had everyone's all that weird story about something bad happening, but overall, it was like everybody was walking around, and yeah, you had the little kids with an adult, and then if you were a teenager, and I said, oh man, I remember all that, and I'm in a way sometimes I'm glad that I had my kids. Same thing, I would take my kids around trick or treating. Eventually they get to a certain age, like when they're 16, 17. It's like, nah, mom, I'm going to go to with so and so. That's different. As a matter of fact, some of them would stay with me and scare the little kids that would come trick or treating at the house. But how can I say it? It was just different. It was enjoyable. It was fun. All right. And you would just people walking around, and everybody was courteous to one another, and you saw neighbors, but then you saw people from a few blocks over and whatever. And believe it or not, I never had a bad experience. Like everybody, anybody trying to what they call stupid teenage, anybody trying to do anything like throw eggs or what they call mischief. Nothing like that. It was great. It was fantastic. By 10 o'clock, maybe the latest, that was it. It was like, okay, turn off the porch light. It's over. Because around that time, about the only ones that would try to trick or treat at your house, usually teenagers. But it was, and now, we were commenting that everything now is so, how can I say, everything for the Halloween thing is very, it's kids going to like a certain area and they all get together. And I was like, the whole fun of the trick or treat was that you were going down, walking through the neighborhood. And for little kids, it's like the parents would stay, let's say, at the gate, and they would have to come to the door and, ask for the trick or treat for the candy. That was, besides the fact of, looking at what you got when you got home as far as the candy or quality of. But yeah, I mean, I want to say where I live at now, it's very rural. There's nobody trick or treating out here. I mean, unless no. But the last time I was living in an area where, like on a residential area, I ended up with leftover candy. And I remember years before, it used to it'd be like, oh, I ran out of candy. Okay, I think I better turn off the light because I have nothing to give these kids when they show up. Maybe, I want to say maybe in the last 10 years or less, is little by little, it's trickled down. That's it. It's like, man, I got a lot of leftover candy. I don't know. I think that's sad. I think that was, but I'm not going to talk about that. The Halloween shows, we're going to maybe go into some other aspects of Halloween and you know, what comes with it, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, I've got that going on. And this time, you know, I was looking at some of the stories that are going on, and I came across this, which I had become unaware of. Okay. This is, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard this gentleman's name is, he's Dr. Jeff Meldrum. All right. And I want to say that he was just in about every Bigfoot, Sasquatch series, you know, interview. And he passed away. He passed away. And basically, this was the Don Jeffrey Jeff Meldrum was born in New York, May 24th, 1958. He died from brain cancer on September 10th, 2025 in Pocatello, Idaho. During 2023, Meldrum suffered a health crisis while he was on a Bigfoot speaking engagement aboard an Alaskan cruise and was taken to a port for medical emergency. He was an American anthropologist and academic. He was a full professor of anatomy and anthropology in the Department of Biological Sciences at Idaho State University. He was also adjunct professor in the Department of Physical and Occupational Therapy and the Department of Anthropology. He was an expert on foot morphology and locomotion in primates. And then it gives, you know, where he studied at, you know, he got his BS in zoology, his MS at BYU, which is Brigham Young University, his PhD at Stony Brook. Anyway, he had the credentials, and I know that just about anybody that had that ever gotten like a Bigfoot casting, they would end up going to him looking for feedback. Yeah, he published numerous academic papers ranging from vertebrate evolutionary morphology, the emergence of bipedal locomotion in modern humans, and the plausibility behind the Sasquatch phenomena. Okay, and all right, in September, he died after a brief battle with brain cancer. He was it's only 67 years old. And again, he attracted media attention due to his interest in Bigfoot, which he preferred terming Sasquatch. He believed that the cryptid hominid Bigfoot exists, and his research on the topic was criticized by some, especially for errors he made endorsing some shaky evidence. Meldrum authored Sasquatch Legend Meets Science in 2006. And he's, you know, as you could tell, because I have pictures for those of you who are watching the video version of this, you could tell he's a very young man. He's doing his lecture tours. Yeah, it says here he was interested in Sasquatch beginnings in the 1980s, but he started speaking on Bigfoot to public groups in 1996, first at Bigfoot Days. All right, man, look at this, no white hairs. So he, you know, besides, I want to say he was mentioned in just about every Bigfoot series or program or documentary. Yeah, he was on the initial board of advisors of the International Cryptozoology Museum with Lauren Coleman. Lauren is another one that's done a lot of work with cryptids. And yeah, I was very sorry to hear this. And I guess, again, because like most people, every time I would see him on some show or something, he did look like he was an old man. So he was an early follower of Grover Krantz and copied Grover's one fossil primate answer to the Bigfoot question. Meldrum's initial position was that Gigantopithecus was the solution, but as Meldrum matured in his thinking, he began to agree with Paranthropus theorist Gordon G. Strassenberg Jr., became a foundation part of his later writings. You know what? I admire that. I admire an academic who's willing to change his stance. He also developed a new view of the Shipton Yeti cast, seen below, and the ICM places no dated cast on exhibit. That's interesting. Yeah, the Yeti, of course, everybody knows this from, like, look at that. That's so interesting. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Let me see. His research can pass questions of vertebrate evolutionary morphology. All right. Yeah, like he made 226 appearances on reality television, documentaries, and on news magazine. Yeah, he was, as you could tell, he was just about everywhere. And he was, I think that what I think I admired the most about him was that he went out there. When there was some other academics wouldn't touch Bigfoot or Sasquatch with a big 10-foot pole, he did. He was he was he was well academic wise. He was well qualified, and he wasn't afraid to like look when they brought him casts. And like they said, he even changed his stance, what he originally thought. And this, believe it or not, there's a lot of academics that don't do that. They get married to their first findings or whatever, and then they don't deviate from that, even though sometimes you get evidence like, hey, either you're wrong or you need to, like, you're close but not quite there. And he did. I really admire that. So I'm sorry to hear that he's passed away. So let's see. I think Lauren Coleman is still around, but let's see who they're going to take all the Bigfoot stuff now to. Because remember, these plaster casts of the Bigfoot is, besides actual fur or anything, this is like one of the most important proof that people out there whether they're doing Bigfoot hunts or just people that have come across it, if you have plaster to pour in there, have provided as proof that Bigfoot exists. So now let's get on to the good part. The good part is, who is the guest today at Stories of the Supernatural? She's been here before. Her name is Pamela Kinney. She's an author. And according to her, she gave up long ago trying not to listen to the voices in her head, and has written award-winning, best-selling horror, fantasy, science fiction, poetry, nonfiction, ghost books, and a cryptid book ever since. 3 of her nonfiction ghost books garnered Library of Virginia nominations. Her horror story, Bottled Spirits, was a runner-up for the 2013 WSFA Small Press Award, and it's considered one of the 7 best genre short fiction for that year. One of her ghost books went to second printing and second editions with new stories and photos added. Pamela and her husband live with one crazy black cat. Along with writing, Pamela's acted on stage and film, does paranormal investigations for Paranormal World Seekers for AVA Productions, and is a member of Horror Writers Association and Virginia Writers Club. And I'm going to have a link to her website on the credits of the show. Help me welcome her. How are you doing today, Pamela? I can't hear you. Oh, wait. No, that's me. I'm sorry. I'm unmuting you. Go ahead.
Okay, I've actually got 2 fiction books coming out from.
You do? I was going to ask you about
one
that.
of them. Well, let me tell you, writing the ghost books and stuff, and everything's set in Virginia. I actually had a YA dark fantasy come out this past year, and earlier the paperback release, and it won the second place at the Book Fest Awards. So
really, wow.
Yeah, I'm writing the sequel at this point, but I'm also writing a second book. But this is the one that is coming out in a few weeks. Nowhere
right.
Land, yeah.
I went on Amazon and I saw that, and I was like, oh, this is about to come out. Wait a minute.
It's getting people buying it, pre-ordering it already. And my publisher was at a convention this weekend, and they came and bought the book, and then they asked if I was there, and she says, no, she's not. So I couldn't be, and that was a good thing, because I actually got a sinus infection, so I probably
really?
wouldn't have been any good sitting at a convention. I would have to go home.
No. Let me see if I could. This is this is the page on Amazon for that book that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And it sounds real interesting. It looks very interesting.
Well,
and you've got another one also in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's set in Richmond. Apocalypse happens. How the vortex changed my life. It was self-published, but it went to her. She's edited some. There's some small edits, and plus they changed. These are a lot of real places in here, and the independent bookstore in Carytown had decided to retire, and they sold to their friends, and they changed the name yearly, so that name is changing here. But yeah, that is an eyeball demon named Larry. So
okie dokie. All right.
But that's the other one. That's urban fantasy with horror. But yeah, but Nowhere Land's taking off, so I'm kind of pleased. I hope that's a good sign. We'll see.
When is the other one that's due to come out later? Is it the same year?
November. Yeah, Nowhere Land will be October 7th, and then the other one's coming out September 30th. The Vortex one.
Oh, so they're right there back to back.
Right, literally, yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, let me ask you and I know you did the cryptid book, and that's why also I always look at what's going on, weird stuff, and that's when I came across that news about Jeff Meldrum.
Right.
And I'm sure I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was just about every show. that they ever had a Bigfoot about. They brought him in as the expert, which he was, academically speaking. And that was one of the things. I think he really truly did believe that they did exist, you know. And
Yeah.
well, there you go. Let me ask you, with the when you did the cryptid book, and I want to say yes, Bigfoot is like one of the most well-known cryptids. But did you ever come across something that you're like, I never heard of this before?
The only thing I did write in cryptids, well, other than the one that's coming out in 2 years, which is Paranormal Appalachian Trail. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be a really big one at this point. I mean, I really went to town on that, on everything. Is
Okay.
Werewolf, Dogman, and Other Shapeshifters Stalking North America. That's the one that's taking off, believe it or not. Same publisher of these fiction books. And that was her
Okay.
first nonfiction, and it sells well. People seem to really get into that. And I
Okay.
did put werewolves and dogmen, which is interesting because they really look alike if you think about looking at
Sure.
all these
Yes.
stories. But I put them separate. The werewolves, anything, especially if they called it a werewolf. There's even a modern story here near here in Henrico County that
Mm-hmm.
has, and it's been in my ghost book, the werewolf. I termed it the werewolf in Henrico, and the Henrico werewolf. And of course, that's what they're calling it. I mean, this place they add more stories all the time. This blah. So, is it a dog man? Whatever. I mean, it's
Right,
interesting.
because this is the thing, when you listen to descriptions of people that have seen dog men, to me it's like, man, that sounds like a giant werewolf to me, like one of these
What
super muscular werewolves.
this has scientifically been proven, and I always believed it because I had a Siberian Husky, and I could tell you right now that dog look is the same as a timber wolf. I have a picture in the book of a timber wolf at the local zoo here,
Mm-hmm.
and a male, and my dog looked just exactly like that. And the dogmen hunters call it, oh, we call them dogmen because they got short snouts. Well, I got news for them. The dog and the timber wolf had this. My dog and the timber wolf had the same long snout, and a lot of
Okay.
dogs do. But some dogs, because now scientists have proven it, they're based off two types of wolves in prehistory. So
Mm-hmm.
dogs really are wolves. They just
Yeah.
got to us. They had some of them had whether it's a gene or something different in them that made them to come to us more
Right.
friendlier. I mean, even now they
Yeah, yeah,
talk
yeah.
about
There's a
dogs.
process where animals become domesticated.
Well, they're changing looks. I mean, it's like they're suddenly got these big eyes. Even cats, it's like
Mm.
being with us for thousands of years. So they
Yes.
came from, like I said, to us, but they're wolves. One's off of Asian, and then another one, I think, I'm trying to remember where they said that one was, but it's closely related to where it is. And you figure we probably changed the animals that we have. I mean, then we got these little ones, and we got these short, smudgy dogs, and that's probably the short snout they're thinking
Right.
more than a real snout, which is timber wolves and Siberian Huskies have the same length of snout.
Well, you know what?
So
I read, like, what was it, a couple of months ago? You know how they let go of all these wolves up like in the Northwest and all these
in
states out
California,
there,
yeah. Well, they're
and they
coming
they
back there,
they've
yeah.
bred so well that the ranchers and cattle people out there are having fits because they're attacking their herds. They've done so well.
Well, they're so used to people at this point. Let's be honest. They've
Yeah.
probably been taken care of. And actually, if ranchers were smart, if I had a farm, I would have electric fence around my thing
Yeah, as a matter
anyway.
of
Because
fact, I
I hate to
wanna
tell
say
you this:
one of
there's
those states
mountain
was
lions,
Wyoming. I think it
there's
was
big
Wyoming.
bears are going to go after your animals anyway. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's what I would do: electric fence to deter the predators from my animals. But hey,
Right, yeah,
I'm not. Yeah, they're not going to listen to me. So,
but
but
yeah,
I
no,
really,
they've done, like, in other words, putting, they reintroduced them. They've done very well. They're doing super well
but if
out there.
as they've proven, we need our predators,
Of
and that's
course.
part of the ecological protection. I
Yes,
mean, we need
absolutely.
animals and that are here for that reason, and we're there, and
Yep,
sometimes it helps people. Learn years later, it does really help the
sure.
environment. So,
Oh, of course. No, oh, absolutely. They eat, they prey. Let's leave the cattle and the humans out of the equation, but yeah, their natural prey keeps everything in balance. Whether it's rabbits or any of these other things that they'll prey on,
deer.
deer. Yeah, it keeps the numbers so that nothing. You don't have too much of anything, and everybody does well. And a lot of people don't realize that even wolves or other predators sometimes they'll bring down the old, the sick, the
Yeah, that can't
and
make it.
that can't make it. And basically they're doing the health of the herd. If it's a herd animal, they benefit from that,
Yeah, much better.
or, and you look at it, we look at it with, when you look at these documentaries for animals, like, oh my God, it's killing the deer, or something like that. It's like, okay, this animal's not doing it out of evil intentions.
It's got
And
to eat just like us.
yeah, but sometimes they go for the weakest link, unfortunately, but that's just the way nature is. There's no malice behind it. How's that?
No, they're just
So,
eating.
but you know
Now
what? Let me
people would
ask you
hunt.
something. One of the things, I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Rougarou, which is like the New Orleans or
Yeah,
French version.
actually in my book. It's the Louisiana werewolf. It's just
Okay,
another form, a different way. I know that a lot of it's if it's somebody that went out hunting on All Saints Day and all these different legends. I don't have my
right,
books with me. Believe it or not, I left the books. I've been in a place somewhere for we store them. But if it has All Saints Day, there's different things like that that they get caught and they turn into a Rougalou, a werewolf.
right.
Which is actually from France, so that's where it all
Well,
starts
but they
from.
always
Loup-garou.
the
The
impression I
loup-garou.
got though that Rougarous were not as
L-
big, or in other words, they were more human. Like, I don't know. That's the impression I always got about a Rougarou
Well, they're loup-garou, Rougalou, the same thing. They kind of they
or the
a lot
Loup-garou.
of it's
Yes,
a lot of it's either if you went out hunting on All Saints Day, all sorts of different things that they believe in, and that's how that person can maybe change. Um, Actually, the bite probably is more of a movie thing. So if we wanted to go about any werewolf stories, the bite probably is more of a
right,
movies.
right. That's like
And the
what cursed
moon
you.
is a movies too, except there is years ago as a younger kid, I remember this book I got and there was a thing in it from a medieval manuscript.
Uh
And they
huh.
did have to have the full moon, but they needed the skin of a belt made of a belt of a skin of a wolf, a
Yes,
furry wolf
right.
to wear. And they danced naked and they did these quotes to become change shape. So
Yeah.
that was on a medieval manuscript that they found somewhere. So
You know
um,
what movie I saw the other day that I had not seen for a long time? I don't know if you ever saw this. This was a book. The original novel was written by Whitley Strieber. It's called Wolfen.
yeah, oh, I that's my
This is a,
favorite.
like this. I hadn't seen it. And all of a sudden, when you're like, "Hey, I
But
haven't
look
seen
at it,
this
it's
for."
almost like a Dogman story
Yeah,
before
I
they even
mean,
thought about Dogman.
when you haven't
He
seen
wrote it.
something for so long, that's like you're watching it for the first time. And I was looking at that. I was like,
Now
wow,
the movie was more like the Native Americans. They call them the Skinwalkers, which is that's a little bit wrong because Skinwalkers
right.
take several. But the Wolfen, the way I liked it, this was '78 when it came out, and I was in college and I read it and all that stuff. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh my gosh, I really like this. This is a different way to do the werewolf story. These are creatures that grew up the same time as us. They lived along us, but most time in the woods, forests,
Right.
hunting. And then he went to the cities where the poor lived, where they couldn't be seen, like New York City was, which is in the book. And they hunted these people down to the cops were investigating these people that died and all that stuff. And it was a really good story. And I thought, now you think about Dogman, it's almost like that, except they live in bunches together. And I thought this is a really good werewolf story. It doesn't have to show him as a shapeshifter. And now we got the Dogman, so you almost think that Whitley Strieber was way ahead of his time writing that
Well,
horror
no, he
novel.
was. It's really weird because he's. I don't. I never did. I read the book. I can't remember. But it was like, they're these, because he makes them look like they're wolves, but they're kind of like mystical in a way. They're not. And they're living in this old church, but basically what they were living off of was they were like eating all the homeless that nobody kept a track
So
of.
they wouldn't get caught. That was their
Right.
smart. They were smart. They were intelligent.
Right. This is
So
how they because it was like a very derelict part of the city, where the only thing that was hanging out there were homeless or drug addicts, or people that if they went missing, nobody
would miss them maybe
would miss them. And
or
of course, they didn't leave. But yeah, it was like, and I go, wow, that's a new angle
he
on that.
actually brought that back out. I have had the paperback somewhere, but he has them out on ebooks now.
Okay,
So you can find them. At least I saw them on Kindle, so and I'm pretty sure there might
okay,
be other
okay.
ebooks, but yeah, he finally brought them back out. I mean, they did a sequel to his vampire one, which was different too. The
Wow.
vampire one, which ended up being a movie with David. Gosh, I can't remember. My brain went brain dead on it. The well-known singer I like too. But but anyway, the
He
so yeah, but they
where
never
was
did that with Wolfman. He actually did a real werewolf book too. That was kind
I
of
didn't know
interesting.
that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's up there. I found it somewhere. He has a one that's like a traditional werewolf, but I like Wolfen better. I really
But
like
you know
it
what?
because
I want to say, I hate to say it, but really I think a lot of people recognize him for is for the UFO,
yeah,
the ET contact books.
yeah,
Yeah.
all those ones he's got. Yes.
Yeah. Those are the ones that really, the other day they were, was it George Norrie? No, Marlene. I can't remember. Somebody was interviewing him and he was talking what had come with after he had published those books, for his abduction
Yeah.
and how it really like he got it, he got, for lack of a better word, he got spanked in a lot of ways, his credibility because of what he had written about that encounter. So yeah, but a lot of people don't realize that he had written all these other fictional
Yeah.
books besides the ET the abduction books.
Well, he was a
Um,
horror writer, so for a long, long time,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and he had a good some good books too.
Yes.
The vampire one was really good. The sequel years later, which was this century,
Mm-hmm.
some people say, but the first one is really, really good. Hunger, the one that made the movie too with David.
Yes, I remember Hunger. Yes, I remember. I know
Yeah,
that.
that was really, really good, and I like the way they did it. They weren't like undead vampires; they just lived long, and they had
Right.
to kill people at night. Didn't have fangs. I mean, it's just different.
Yes, exactly. None of that. Yes. That the undead thing, whatever. Yes. Yes, I
So,
like it when people put, like a little bit, they go out of the norm of these, urban legends or myths and things like that.
well, let me tell you, you have to do that one. When I wrote Nowhere Land, I wanted to do a haunted house one, but I didn't want to do a haunted house one
Mm-hmm.
because haunted houses, there's a lot of them out there, and you can do a lot of
Yeah.
interest. There's one that just came out that was different, and then last years, few months ago, another author I know, he wrote one, How to Sell Your Haunted House and stuff like that. But I
You know
wanted
that
mine to
there's
be
you know that there's real estate agents that's what they specialize in, what they call stigmatized properties because of that.
there is a TV series on Sci-Fi, and it's on
Uh-huh.
Hulu. No, not
Okay.
Hulu, on Hulu, and it's
Uh-huh.
that's what they are. They're agents, and they actually get
Yeah.
rid of the ghosts so that people can sell them. It's really funny.
Well, no, no, no. It
Tells
was
you,
really funny because one time I said, "Oh, come on." And they were saying that yes, and it's that, or if like the property, anything's like a murder or something like that, and it's got a reputation that there's
well,
basically a subset of realtors
they
that
can
someone like you
sell it for
said, they
good money.
cleanse and they sell your property.
They can sell it for good money. I knew an
Yes.
investigator, her and her group was twice they did to this place, and it was in Petersburg, which you would think would be really, really haunted. It's a very good place, but then this place was
Mm-hmm.
that old. It's 1700s, and I've
Okay.
walked past it. It's in my Petersburg ghost book, and I remember thinking, God, that's a real fixer-upper. There's holes in it and everything, but it's. I wonder if they would sell it cheap enough because that's like an old historical house, but
Yeah.
they got nothing, and the lady was upset because she said that was with a big price to be able to sell it as haunted. So
You know what I've noticed is, as a matter of fact, around the corner from me, there's a house here. I want to date it back to maybe 1895, 1896. I went in there one time with one of the other ladies, and the only thing that's I think keeping it upright is the brick chimney. The rest of it is wooden, two floor. Outside, it's got a big cement cistern, but that thing is like. We were always hoping. And one time they said, "Oh, somebody's going to buy it and turn it into like a restaurant," but that never. But from what I understand, sometimes when it's a historical house, they make sometimes the new owners follow a certain code of building or rebuilding it or
yeah,
remodeling it.
the outside they can't change it. They have to have a certain type of paint.
Right.
So that's why you have to almost hire somebody historical. Something goes wrong with the outside, or if they have to paint it.
Yeah, like they want
Inside,
you got to keep it. And
inside people have changed in their homes and not been At least
Yeah, I
not
know, but
around
I think
here.
that's sometimes the cost. Especially like when you said a fixer upper.
But it's also, if it's really haunted and they fix the inside to make it more comfortable, that brings out the ghosts. I live not far from one. It's in my 2 Haunted Richmond books. It's up the street from me here, and I've
Mhm.
been inside it, and it's haunted by the lady in red and a few of that. And they moved the house too,
Oh
where it
yeah,
used to
people.
be, and then when they sold
Uh-huh.
that to become a shopping center, they put that back there, and she went with the house. She didn't
Oh
stay in the
yeah, so
shopping
it's
center to haunt.
just yeah, I've heard of that. Where was it the other day? I was reading a story. This is up in was it Long Island? And it was the same thing. It was a house, and right next to it was the barn. And at some point, I want to say it dated back to the early 1800s when it was built. And at one point, like in the 1940s, they separated the barn and they, like you said, they moved it like down the street. They just moved it and they made it into a small house. And there was a lady that lived out there who she was like the first postmistress out in that little island by herself. When she was 21, this is like, you would drive the mail out and the packages and everything. And she was very fond of her horses. And the people that ended up occupying what used to be the barn would say that they would see her over there because she would come, her thing was the horses. She was very attached to her horses.
Yeah.
And like you said, even though it technically was at a different spot, she would still go over there. She followed it. So,
There's an old couple of places out there actually in Staten. Better
mhm.
pronounce it right, Staten, Virginia. It's going to be in Paranormal Appalachian Trail, and they're mental institutions. One of them actually is connected, believe it or not, to the genetics over here thing going on with Hitler. Believed over
Mhm.
there, they had
Right.
it here in the 30s. This
Really.
doctor was famous for it. I mean, stories really horrible, so I can see why that place
Mhm.
would be really haunted. But they moved to a new one. They made up, built a new one, and
Okay.
they swear that workers that went to work over the new one, the old one was just left where it was for people to, but they would have incidents happening with the elevators in the new one too.
I believe it.
So did the ghosts move from there, some of them over to there, that they
I've
were
even
having
heard of when they've repurposed material, whether it's stone or timber, that sometimes whatever was happening in the original house, when people repurpose materials,
right?
they still get some type of a haunting in some cases. Even and we're just talking here materials. It's really a different structure, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like some type of I don't want to say like an imprint as to what was going on. And then you hear about people that like the whole neighborhood or the whole block
Yeah.
has got stuff going on.
Well, Virginia is pretty haunted. Actually, there's a guy doing a panel in a few weeks on the 4th with the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker and that, and a couple other authors. We're doing a vampire
Dacre,
one,
is it
and
Dacre Stoker?
yeah, Darcy Stoker, yeah,
I've
and
I've
we're doing
yes,
that.
I've interviewed him. He's really interesting. If he's
Yeah,
the same.
we're gonna be doing that, and anyway, my brain went brain out off track, but there is the library's haunted too, they think, and all that, and it's an old
Really?
library, so it's Richmond. But anyway, the guy in charge to put it together is a local ghost tour guy and
Mhm.
vampire tour one down in Richmond. He came from New Orleans. Until he had problems with the stuff affecting his sinuses and stuff, so he sold his vampire one to a friend that he had for
Okay.
years there, and he moved from to here, and he says been doing a lot of, because he's been doing the tours, he's been doing research on Richmond. He says
Okay.
he actually said Richmond is more haunted than New Orleans.
I believe it. I believe it.
And I
I
believe
believe
it
it.
because well, years ago they used to mention that the most haunted city, this was years ago when I was younger. I read it somewhere, and I lived in California. The most haunted city in the United States was considered Richmond, Virginia. And
Um
actually, no, not Richmond, but the haunted state was Virginia. So I'm thinking Richmond would be, because there's a lot of stuff going here. We had the 1600, way back to the 1600s. You had the
yes,
Revolutionary War. This became the capital after Williamsburg. We had the
right.
Civil War. We had a fire downtown Richmond, had a big fire. The theater burned down. So it's famously the church there is haunted. That's
Okay.
empty. It's a historical thing, but it's empty. But they've had things because they think to do with the theater fire. There's all sorts of stuff. We had the train buried under the hill in the 1920s. That was the second time they went, and it's still under there. And it's there's
What is that
voices.
about?
People
How did
in
that happen?
Shacklebottom, there was a train. They decided they wanted to go around, not round Richmond, but make a tunnel to go through it. Okay,
Okay.
so they took an engineering train to dig it out. Well, it collapsed on the front. It killed the
Okay.
engineer and a few others. Well, they brought him out. He wasn't quite dead, and that was the story that it was him that they found. But he looked, and he died. But there grew a vampire story with him.
Okay.
The Richmond vampire. He's real famous here for most people. He supposedly, the story goes that they came to this guy leaning over this other guy that was brought out of the cave in, and the thing jumped up, turned around, had a mouthful of jagged teeth, ran, and they all started chasing it. And of course, if you chase from where that is all the way to Hollywood Cemetery, okay, where
Okay.
it ends up, it'd be a long time on either horseback or by foot. I mean, now you got
Right.
cars, you can get there in minutes, but not that. And they end up chasing it all the way to the tomb of W.W. Poole.
Okay.
So for years they said he was the Richmond vampire. He had died. He was pale. Probably was sickly. I mean, there was no other stories you could look up about anybody dying of blood loss and stuff. So him and his wife had to be buried. I took a tour with some friends when we were at a book club. We did a
Mm-hmm.
tour there in the fall, and they said they had to rebury them in an undisclosed location because people for years was trying to break into the tomb. Either they were Satanists,
Right. I was
and
gonna
they
say
thought,
people don't realize that. Yeah.
or they thought he was a vampire and they wanted to stake him.
Yes.
So they had to remove his body. So the bodies aren't in there; they're somewhere else in the park at the big famous cemetery. But yeah, he's the Richmond temp. His tomb has got this lamb on it. It is kind of creepy, that lamb sitting on top of the tomb. But yeah, we have the Richmond vampire. So we have the Richmond vampire, and now we have the Henrica werewolf. So
You know what? This is when you brought up Richmond, I was like, wait a minute. This was like 3 years ago. I researched it because I was looking at stuff with Mardi Gras, and people don't realize that Mardi Gras was celebrating a lot of southern states. It wasn't
yeah,
just New Orleans. And back in 1842, Mardi Gras is going on. Okay. There's a murder. There's a guy named Fletcher Heath. He and his friend partner, they have basically, you know how they would set up like a pharaoh table room, but people like they had like a one room gambling joint kind of deal. But anyway, Fletcher Heath, he gets jealous of his mistress and his friend, partner, whatever. And he ends up killing her. He ends up stabbing her. He breaks through the door and kills her. But this is how they described him. Okay. He was dressed in gray pants, a black frock coat, black satin vest linen, bosom and collar, black satin stock and high shoes. He wore black kid gloves and a black overcoat with a green suit out. He was 5 feet 10 inches and weighed about 130 pounds and was about 25 years old. He had dark eyes and long black hair. Oh my God, that's my grandson. His complexion was livid with a long face, sharp feature, and cheeks sunken below prominent cheekbones. I don't know, but to me, that sounds like a vampire. And I know, and by the way, this is how the newspapers of the day described him. This is how they described him. This was not, he had family in a place called Petersburg. I think that's close by there. Bottom line,
it's a little bit longer distance if you're walking or even by horse. By car, it takes a half an hour between
but
downtown
he
Richmond to
somehow or other,
Petersburg.
he shot his friend like behind the ear, but the bullet got jammed, but didn't kill him. And he escaped before going to trial for killing his mistress. And they were saying that his family, and apparently his family was well known there in that Petersburg area.
Yeah,
And they helped
actually
him.
Petersburg was famous more famous in Richmond for where you can go to the opera and everything. In fact, Poe had his wedding and his honeymoon there.
Who?
I've been to his honeymoon. That's in my Petersburg book. I don't know what it's like now because the guy tried to earn Kickstarter money to turn it into a bed and breakfast, the upstairs, and he didn't get it. Of course, everybody was, I guess, was more interested in other stuff than what he could do. And then he sold it to a guy that was into the business with the filmmaking. A lot of filmmaking was done in Petersburg, and now I heard it's a beauty parlor. That's what I've heard, and I don't
Okay,
know the
but
second floor. There's the first floor. It
mhm.
was Hiram Haynes owned it. He was Hiram Haynes' coffee shop or coffee. What they call coffee houses wasn't what we think about it back then, but he was friend of Poe. He was a poet himself and an editor, and he told him, he says, instead of honeymooning, they got married in Richmond. Come here to Petersburg and stay up in my up above my business, the Hiram
Mhm.
Haynes business. He had his house in the back, so him and his family were back there. And so Paul was on the second floor, and I've been where the room where their bed is and the parlor. And even had at this point for a long while, these had this um, doll thing, well, like you have for posing with clothes on. She's sitting at the window, and they say every year, supposedly January 31st, they say that she comes to the window. That's Poe's
Really?
wife, but I don't know if that's true. I didn't when I did a ghost box session there, and
Uh-huh.
he let me do that. And I went up there to that and the third floor. The third floor was actually a Civil War hospital when it was in the middle of the siege. They had the hospital up there. But I went to the second floor. I didn't get Poe. I didn't get Poe's wife. For all I know, maybe that was their happiest spot anyway. So I don't know if that's
Sometime.
why they would want, a happiest. I did get the French guy that owned it before Haynes owned it. And I
Mhm.
asked him to speak in some kind of, I said, well, can you speak in French to prove it's you? Because he would
Okay.
speak a little bit English with an accent. He says, "We." So I said, "Okay, I guess you're telling me yes." So
Mhm.
I got him and all that. Upstairs, I did get the nurse that nursed the Civil War soldiers and the Civil War soldiers.
Okay.
And I got a picture. It's in the book. It's on the window. There is nothing outside of the window except the brick. They had
Mhm.
turned that part in the area down below into a part of the restaurant. And so there's a thing underneath for the second floor. You can walk across there, but it's got brick walls. There's nothing on the walls outside. There's nothing on the glass. And there was nothing on the glass when I took the picture and looked at it straight on. And of course, he thought the guy that owned the place said, "Oh, it's got to be Poe," because he was actually himself was a retired editor from New York. So he was
Right.
excited. Thought Poe, right, editor and all that stuff. But I said, well, they all looked like that. They could have been the Civil War soldiers. They didn't look like we think of the military today. They all look
Right.
like Poe in a way. Poe was in the military, and we've seen pictures of him. He didn't look any different. So it could have been anybody on there. But,
Right. Sometimes some of these things that you see through windows, and I'm glad you mentioned that there was a brick. But sometimes if there's any reflection that can come in from the outside as far as
there's
landscaping.
no reflection. It was inside the other side.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean.
And it's just, yeah, it looks like it's a figure. Even my editor saw it. I didn't have to say anything.
But
And
yeah.
I said, I don't think it's Poe, but I mean, he didn't answer, so it's kind of odd. I mean, those
But
that
you know
answered, the
what,
soldiers did answer, and so did the nurse.
Pamela, sometimes some of these ghosts or
Mhm.
whatever images that show, they're not the usual suspects. Sometimes things go on in certain places that were never documented. You see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, but
That
they answered me though.
they
I
did
asked
answer.
questions, and so the woman. In fact, the woman was, she made me nervous. When I went down to the second floor, I thought to go across that thing when you left through the door. It was through the doorway. It goes there's a like a bridge cross.
Okay.
I thought I asked a little few couple, and I heard that woman's voice, same woman's voice. She must have followed me downstairs to the second floor, and she goes,
Okay.
"What are you still doing here?"
Oh, one
I
of
said,
those, huh?
okay." I said, "Okay, well then I guess I'll go downstairs and goodbye." I'm thinking I'm thinking I'm not going to push her. I don't want her pushing me down because, like she was really like that upstairs too. That
Uh-huh.
brusque type of attitude. So I'm not going to upset her. So I went down the stairs quietly. But she
Yeah.
did. She said, "What are you doing here still?"
Yeah, you hear that a lot from people doing paranormal investigations. There's like this ownership kind of thing going on.
Well, they're people. I've learned so much. Like I've had people go, "Have you ever had demons?" Oh no, you must have No, I said the two people in my life, ghosts in my life that were bad. So I can tell they weren't demons. They're just bad people
Yeah,
who
bad people that
didn't
happen to
die
be
and
dead.
changed.
Now that they're
And
dead.
they cussed and they do. One was in a bookstore
Uh-huh.
and he was browbeating the little kid. It was on there
Really?
too. And I said, honey, I said, go on over to the other side to his parents. I said, you don't have to have any big bully you after death when he's in life. But he let me know off the bat, get out of this place. I'm going, no, I can't. We're here investigating, and this is a bookstore anyway.
And because what originally the building was like what, a house or
I
what?
no, it's a shopping center. They
Oh,
actually,
okay, so maybe something that
from
was there
what we
before.
gathered, too, there was a lot of dead people there. And my friend who couldn't make the investigations on my team, she had to have her tooth pulled. She did a lot of research. And
Uh-huh.
that part of Henrico, what used to be there was a lot of Monacan Indians to start with.
Oh, okay.
And then when the English came, they left and went more out west.
Okay.
So there's probably graves buried under, and who knows if they either took them out and threw away the bones. I mean, there's a lot of stories that if the people are building these places, they don't tell because then they'll be stopped by historically, especially in Virginia. It's very historical to stop
Right.
anything
Mm-hmm.
happening because it could be,
Right. Yes, they
and
do.
or they're either buried under there. And so the Indians are out there, so they're right about that. But these were two not Native Americans. So one was
Well,
a
no,
kid.
because I was gonna say that person doesn't sound like Native American.
No,
This sounds
the
like
little
something
kid
more modern.
was young, and he said Civil War time he died regular. And then the man, he could be regular for all I know. I don't know, but he he says he called me a bitch. So
And you're like, all
oh, I
right.
know that. I said that's why I tell people. So these people are like that. They don't. I said, believe me. I told someone. I said, if you had a real, honest to God demon, you wouldn't be able to get rid of it. These people are just people that were nasty in life, and they're
Yeah,
not
yeah,
going to
they're
be
still the
any
same
change
thing.
when they die. No leopard. They say leopards don't change their spots. They sure don't.
Mm-hmm.
There was
Yeah.
another one that happened up northern Virginia. It was in a woman's bathroom in this community center. They had a paracon there, and
Okay.
they had mentioned that one of the psychics said, there's a guy and he's looking under the shower under the bath stalls. I thought, oh my gosh. And because part of it had regular people there. So that means kids are
I
doing
lost you.
things, the
I lost your
community
count.
center. Who knows? Little
Oh,
girls will
there
go
you
in
go.
there.
Okay, you're back.
So I
Okay.
went in there. I'm the type that won't take this from anybody. And at first I took a picture, and I'm pretty sure I saw shoes and legs against the wall, but that was okay. I started my ghost box. And it
Okay.
came out with hardly any noise, but shh. And then I would hear something like a voice. I said, who is there anybody here for the spirit? I said, can you speak up louder? What did you say? And it got louder. And finally it got where I understood what it was.
Okay.
You bitch.
All
Every
right.
time. And I said, oh, so that's all you can say. And he got louder. You bitch. And it was
Yes.
on. And I said, oh, so are you the kind of guy that's in here? Did you just purposely die here? I mean, this is a big area. You might not have died just in a woman's bathroom. Exactly. You're going to haunt a woman's bathroom. I said, little girls come in here. Do you stare under the stalls at little girls? You bitch. He got lost.
In
I
other
was
words, he was
really,
like an intelligent thing. He understood what you were talking about.
he knew what I was. I mean it. I mean, come on. Like, this is the only place you're going to haunt a woman's bathroom? I'm not. I don't
No, let
think
me
you
tell you
change.
something. Some of these places, people don't realize that some of these I'm sure you've heard there's ghosts that dislike men or dislike women. Like they have their preference, or they'll give, they'll answer questions. Let's say when a woman's asking it, but
Well,
then
they
if a
die
man's
in the
asking,
area. They're going to haunt the bathrooms too. Henrica's Historical Park up here. It's in my haunted Richmond too. Um, it's haunted, even the bathroom, because somebody said they didn't know the the bathroom thing. That's why I was always careful with that bathroom. I've gotten a voice in there before, so I knew. But she was trying to dry her hands. One of the investigators had somebody investigate there one night, and she went and they turned on. They had left on her recorder, and as
right?
she turned it back on, listening to it, you can tell someone said, you can, right when she's complaining about she can't get the thing to dry, some voice comes out, a male voice says, "Oh, come on, your hand's already dried."
Okay.
So she knew there was something in the bathroom. So I keep saying when I go in bathrooms, like places I know that have that, I say, please, I don't want you staring at me. I have issues. I
Right.
had my
Yeah.
bath,
You
my
know what? And it's really funny because you do hear that. I mean, places like restaurants or places that were like really old and then they could get converted into a restaurant or something. For some reason, bathrooms seem to be like a place where people have encounters. Um, One time I was doing that's I wasn't a skyscraper, but it was one of the first mini skyscrapers in Miami. And one of the places that had a reputation for being haunted was the bathroom. And it was like of everything. There was one floor in particular that had something going on there, but it was of all the places, the bathroom. But yeah, and I don't know if it has something to do with water. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what it
I,
is.
I can understand if you got killed in there or something like that, your stories, but
Right.
if you didn't get killed there, why are you in the bathroom? And if you're not
Yes.
a female and if you can understand, but if you're a male, believe me, their spots don't change. There was
Yeah.
another one. It's actually a hotel in Williamsburg, and
Mm-hmm.
I gather talking to the people that work there, so you learn to because they always had me do an investigation thing like that. So to find out where this hotel had it, they told me there's been issues in that particular woman's bathroom in the convention center area. So we went there and we actually got voices coming out our ghost box, and my friend Mark was filming me for he's head of ABA production. So we're hearing all this out of the box and it
Uh-huh.
answering and the meters going, and a woman walks in there and a vampire. It's a convention, science fiction. She's wearing a vampire outfit and long dress, walks in there. Okay. And then it gets quiet. And then it's real quiet. The meter stops, but the voice still talking. And then the next minute she's walking back out and the voice stops. And I said, oh, he must have been following her. But he wants the
Okay.
woman's bathroom. So now we know why he's interested in the woman's bathroom. Why would he follow her? Be quiet after she left like he was following her. So,
Right, right.
like I
Well,
said,
that's what I'm
sometimes
saying.
they don't change their spots.
Yeah, like there's something that they're like that's something about. I know that in some cases people don't think of it, but sometimes if that person reminds them of someone they knew, they kind of like are interested in them or follow them around just because there's something either their characteristics or even the way they look reminds
I
them.
hope that's what it is. I'm thinking it's other things, but that's
What are you
okay.
thinking?
That's a pretty woman. I'm going to follow her.
Oh yeah. Well,
I
no,
don't mind
obvious. That's
that, but at least this one didn't cuss or anything else. But the other one that cussed, I kind
yeah.
of didn't
Well,
like
and
it.
it's
Those
like
little
this is
girls, I don't like it when a psychic sees them peeking under the stalls. I'm thinking, some little girl goes in there. What the heck, you know? I
and
mean,
this is probably what they would. This is their, like you said, this is who they were when they were alive. So some of the like that. For lack of a better word, they're called perverts. You know?
they've been around for a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh God.
Like I
Yes.
said, they don't change their spots. People think they're demons half the time. I said, no, most of the time it's just plain old ghost stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
And I'm
everybody thinks.
Catholic, so this, if anybody's going to believe in the demons, it'd be me. But
Well, no,
nothing
no. A
I
lot
have
of people
encountered.
think that that dying automatically enlightens you, and it's like, no, not really.
No, there's some people that I don't think they're enlightened. There's some people probably are going not going to. They've been bad enough, they're not going to go to hell. No, they're going to, and they're not going to change themselves the way they were. You think, well, now you died and you died bad and you didn't get forgiven and you're afraid of hell. This is a time for you
Right.
to prove yourself better. But I don't
And
think
you
some
know
of them
what? A
do.
lot of them, I tell people, you know what? Especially a lot of people, even if during life they might not have been the religious kind, but they might have had some foundation of it. Then when they're at the end of life, all of a
Yeah,
sudden they either become afraid maybe of all they did, or that there was always, I don't think it's prevalent now, not at all, but there was always a certain expectation that you should be buried a certain way, or the like you're gonna bury me in consecrated in a grave or a cemetery.
you're right.
And they, to us, we're thinking, not a big deal. But once upon a time, stuff like that was important. So much so, I'm sure you come across it. This is why they wouldn't allow, let's say, suicides to be buried in a regular
Right.
cemetery, or if somebody was hung, let's say, for being a murderer, some type of criminal, same
Or if
thing.
she's an actress.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Poe's mother was an actress, and she died here in Richmond, and she was buried at St. John's Churchyard, but
Uh-huh.
she had no stone or anything. Nobody knew they knew basically where the area was, but they couldn't be sure.
Yes.
They didn't want to dig up all that. So they have the Poe Museum put together money, and they put up a memorial to her there, but no one's for sure where. She's in that area, but they didn't give her a headstone or anything because she
Yeah.
was an actress.
Right.
This
That
is
was like,
1800.
you're one step above. In the there's one time, well, that's was my first book that it was talking about a lot of these women that ended up, being prostitutes, whatever, out west and everything. And a lot of them would end up changing their name on purpose so that their families would never be. But every once in a while, if they died or killed themselves,
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, the ones that kind of gave them a burial was the madam. If they were working in a brothel. But
Yeah.
every once in a while, they would have the family. You know how you would go to cemeteries and you had like a plot area for the family?
Yeah.
They would like claim the body, but of, like you said, bury her in the corner back there with no headstone. So nobody knows. Like, this was the shame of the family, that kind of thing. And then, like, in life and in death kind of thing. Like, we're not even marking you
Yeah.
where you are, or your name, or nothing. That's it. You're lucky we picked up the body. So yeah, they were back then.
Well,
It was
little kids, if they're born when they're babies or not that much older, certain age,
mm-hmm,
they have headstones, but there's no name on them because they save that name for the next That's what I found out taking a
mm-hmm.
tour of one of
Really?
these big
Oh,
churches. Really, the oldest one I think down in Suffolk, which has the oldest church down there, and they said that, so that's what they do. They take the name for the next child. That's kind of a weird thing to save it because that's why they don't give names right off the bat and all that stuff, because I guess
oh,
people
just in
die
case.
a lot quicker, little ones and all that.
Interesting. I had never heard of that.
So
That's
that's why
very
you might see some children, babies, and stones, but they don't have any name on it because
right
they're
that you
saving
could
that
tell
name
it's the
for the
child's
next child
grave.
that might live beyond the age.
Interesting. I had not. Yeah, there's the people used to put more. What's the word I'm looking for? Symbolism or thought into like the burial, and
Yeah.
afterwards and of course, all these, when they used to have these obelisks and all this stuff, even those mausoleums, it was like it even reflected on your, like, the way you got buried mattered.
And if you're rich, I saw the grave. I have it in it's going to be coming, my book's coming out. This was the only one Schiffer didn't take and end up with a small press. I got my rights back, and Dream Puck's bringing it back out. It'll probably be January, February. And there's two pictures in it. One's at night, one's at day. I took the library, their cemetery tour for Halloween, and he told
Right.
stories about one woman there had enough money that not only was the front of her stone engraved, the back was engraved too.
Wow.
And he said that's because they had money to do it.
Yes. Yes.
So that's the first time I've ever seen that. So
Yes. This is it was like you said, it was like almost like a status symbol kind of deal.
yeah, they could afford
What
to
kind
give
of
her.
memorial the family had in the cemetery, uh, whether it was those big giant obelisks, or even, God, like a little mausoleum or family
Right.
crypt kind of thing. Yeah, that
But this was her regular old grave, and she had a stone front and back, and I've never seen that before. But that's what the guy said. He was expert on learning all that stuff. That meant that the family had money to be able to
and I
do
know
that
that they have
stuff.
a lot of things sometimes that are like symbols and put on the graves that you don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, the people knew that what it meant. Now we look at it, we're like, what? But they has some type of meaning.
yeah,
That's one of the things that nowadays, you know what? I look at it, and mm, part of it, I think, I think a part of it is the cost nowadays, looking at it from through modern eyes. But when I was down in Miami, there was this old cemetery. It was abandoned, but this field was still there. In other words, nobody had touched it. And at one time, it was owned by the local masons in that area, the lodge in that area. But what would happen is in that area, there's a lot of limestone. Like, I'm not kidding. You dig down like 6 inches and you hit limestone.
Oh my.
But the poor people would bury there because I think they had to pay $25 to dynamite the hole. That's how bad. And the Masons would allow them because what they were doing is that there were like a lot of workers in South Florida. This was around maybe the turn of the century, a little bit afterwards. So they were doing a lot of like the railroad construction and all this. And they would basically allow them to be buried there. And for the least amount of money. But yeah, nobody thinks of it like this was the one area, where nobody else wants a cemetery and we'll just going to charge you guys to dynamite a hole. But as a matter of fact, I remember I did get a legend but about the only memorials that were left are the ones that had been in World War I, that the military gave them the granite tombstones.
Yeah.
But everybody else, all you saw was, when the earth falls in,
Yeah.
like, when it settles. Yeah, that was the only thing left out there. But yeah, there's a lot of times, a lot of these places that if it wasn't for those 3 memorials from the 3 soldiers from World War I, nobody would ever tell that there was a cemetery out there. And I think that happens a lot where after a while, everybody forgets. And before you know it, somebody decides, hey, we're going to put up a whatever, fill in the blank. Just because, especially if the lands become valuable. How's that?
Well, I can tell you there's in Petersburg, talk about Petersburg, there is a
Mm-hmm.
house made of tombstones.
And
It's famous. A house made of tombstones for real.
Oh,
Petersburg
man.
the city of Petersburg sold them. They own this. Excuse me. This is from my allergies. I've been taking cough syrup to stop it. The antibiotics are working on me. But they they owned the cemetery at the time. Now the government owns it. It's National Cemetery.
Okay.
But at the time they owned it and they sold all the tombstones to this
Wow.
builder to get some money. They needed it. So he built the house and the walkway, and it looks like my son was with me that day. He was an adult, he was a younger adult then. He said, "Oh, that just looks like bricks, stones." I said, "No, honey, those are gravestones inside the house. I gather the writing is in there."
Let me tell you, that's pretty creepy. Oh, that's
And
pretty creepy.
I can go on. I'll talk about the cemetery part first. Well, now the government owns it, and actually they buried because a lot of them were actually Confederate soldiers or Union soldiers buried there. So
Mm-hmm.
they took them and after the war, and they put little modern times. They put like the modern ones on the flat on the ground. So there's those there now, and those just
Okay.
say what year they were buried because they got some World War I soldiers there too later. It's
Oh,
owned by the
really?
government, but that time it was the city. But talk story about the place. Now it was an L.B. Taylor who was famous around here for writing a lot of these, looking up the ghost book stories and
Mm-hmm.
for his books. So about that, well, I was at a Rich Blanford Cemetery's office because I went and did their stuff, did an investigation around there with my thing, my because there's ghosts in the cemetery. But I'm inside, and the 2 workers were talking about the house made of tombstone. And my ears popped up because they mentioned about something like a ghost. So
And you're
I
like,
walked
really?
over there. I put my recorder down. What's this story about this ghost in the house? So
Uh-huh.
they talked the story. There was a nephew. He got really drunk, so he came home to his uncle's. And uncle says, "Look, you really can't drive home. It's not safe for you doing it. Drink. Go upstairs, go to bed, and you sleep it off." Well, he went upstairs and slept it off. And he got woken up by something like a rebel yell. And he sits up, freaking out. And there's a
Uh-huh.
Civil War soldier standing in front of him who vanishes.
Oh, boy.
So they did follow their tombstone. And the funny thing is, I used to thought nobody was going to haunt a cemetery. That's the least place you want to haunt. You're going to haunt your house or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
why would you
Uh-huh.
haunt your grave? I mean, your bodies are. But now I'm thinking, well, these are different times. They probably believe much differently
Hmm.
than I would,
Yes.
and so for them, that's part of their selves as much as their homes and everything else. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're gonna follow the tombstone to the tombstone house. And it was proof that they had a ghost in there that Taylor only read about that, but I found it by talking to these people around there. So
Let me
yeah,
tell you something. They oh, well, that's the one. You know what? It's like, yeah, whether it's haunted or not, it's like, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's material, but that's what I was telling about. Sometimes people repurpose, build timbers or bricks or just stones, and then get the haunting that went with it. And I don't know what it is about materials that you would think the structure's not there, but for some reason, there's on a metaphysical level, there's something there
well,
where
it's
you'll
the
get
tombstone.
manifestations.
Well, to me, the tombstone is there, so that's why they're haunting it. It's got their writing on. It's the writing's still on it. It's in the house. It's so funny,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so they just kind of probably think that's theirs. I don't know about other stones. At least I know that if somebody's attached something, I guess if they had a favorite ring or something and they died and somebody didn't bury it with them, I
Oh,
guess
yeah.
that would probably, I can imagine. I know that places with a lot of historical stuff for sale, I know a place like that, Curiosity and Oddity, place over here in Henrique. We did an investigation. Mark couldn't make it, but we did it, and some of it might have to do with the land. I mean, it's Richmond area, Henrico
Hmm.
County, whatever. It's all that, but some of it had to be the stuff that came there.
Sure.
And when we did it, number one, my husband's pretty pragmatic. He doesn't, for a long while, he's very pragmatic, and he doesn't, just immediately believed. And finally got him into ghost hunting with me, and he handles the cameras. That makes him happy.
Yeah, that's
When he would have one that kept going off, it would be looking other places. Not supposed to. I had him go and look straight down toward the front of the store, and he'd find it moved up or moving this way or moved this, like someone had actually physically moved it. None of us
okay.
did. So he had to move it. He was getting frustrated more than anything else. But there was one where I was trying to do a camera, my camcorder, and it didn't work that night. And I'm pretty sure that was ghosts. But
Yeah.
funny thing is, my friend had her recorder in there, and at one point, she went and she calls me later, and she had played it for me. It was real loud too. It goes, she goes, it says, they were real quiet, and she was listening, and she says, all of a sudden, hey, should we say something? Was a man's
Oh,
voice, and a woman's
wow.
voice says, shh, no, don't tell him anything. So it was where from a recorder where all the stuff was. Was
Wow.
it connected to any of the stuff? I don't know. That's when I was there. We figured it had to be when I was. No, let's not tell him anything. I thought that was really bizarre.
Sometimes it's really weird because sometimes you have hauntings where they're carrying on the life that they lived while they were alive. How's that? Their schedule or their actions are like they're reenacting what they would do, let's say.
Right.
And then there's others that seem to be aware of
Oh, well,
the
they're
live
aware of
humans.
us, believe me.
So yeah, I was
I
gonna say that
figured
sounds like they were aware of you guys.
it. We shouldn't tell them anything. I
Yeah.
don't know what secrets they wanted to keep secret, but
Well, let me tell you something. You know that there was a time like I want to say post Civil War where they were, that they were stealing the bodies from the graves to supply these anatomy departments for the universities, and that's another one that I'm thinking, man, that'll create a haunting. That'll be it. Your body is like removed from the grave and ends up being dissected
yeah.
at some university. That was, and let me tell you something. That was people don't realize. Think of the that it was pretty common. And what's really bad is that the head of these university medical programs were the ones that were paying off. We were paying a lot of money sometimes to have these these bodies brought in. And by the way, they didn't, some people think, well, they were picking up the indigent or whatever. No, a lot of times when you said that thing about jewelry being taken off, uh, some of these guys that were doing the dirty work, as I call it, which is like pulling these, there was a double purpose for it. They were taking stuff off the bodies and then selling the body
Yeah.
to whatever university wanted them. But yeah, I said, well, that'll give you a hunting, I'm sure.
So can mortuaries. The place will last. It's no longer a hotel. I don't know what's going to happen. They're turning it to an older senior citizens place, and the place is really haunted. It's in my Virginia Haunted Historic. I went to second printing. I got pictures, and that's not all of the pictures. Believe me, there was a lot of images of ghosts. Say a lot of them Civil War soldiers in there.
Okay.
Fort Magruder Hotel, but next to it was a mortuary, and I heard that they had stories about it when it was a house before that. So it's haunted, but it's haunted next to a haunted area that they had a battle too. But there was actually
Oh
a
boy, it's
battle.
surrounded then.
There was a big battle in Williamsburg during the Civil War, and actually a lot of the bodies, even though it's named after Fort Magruder wasn't near there. That just named the hotel. What was there was earthworks, and they buried a lot of the bodies there. In fact, they found them when they went to the back of the hotel. They were doing a landscaping,
Oh
and they
boy, you're
dug up
kidding.
the bodies. So yeah, a lot of them were Northern soldiers. I mean, the Civil War, it was the South, so the Southerners were picked up, but not the Northern. So they're in there, and they're there because I actually become friends kind of in a way with one of them. He was a Northern soldier. He was real nice, Thomas.
Let me tell you something. People don't realize that sometimes, especially during battle, they had no choice because, especially if it was war and if it was hot, they had to do these mass burials of soldiers.
Well, they dumped them right off the bat. That was a big
Yeah.
thing. The last one is in haunted Richmond too. It's Sailor's Creek. That's when Lee lost completely and went straight on. His son died there actually. They buried both of them in there. They just dumped them. The people in charge that knew that area and knew what was there that was buried.
Right. Okay.
It's really haunted there. It's probably more haunted than Gettysburg, but like I said, I always say Gettysburg has more press, but they have
Oh yeah, it does.
both Southern and Northern buried. They just dumped them all there. They had no time. It was the last thing. It lost last war.
Yeah.
So that one's on it. But this one here, yeah, there were bodies,
Yeah,
and
but
they're still there, and some are soldiers.
they sometimes people think, and also I want to say a lot of times if there was some type of fever epidemic, contagion, that's another thing. Especially in the South when it got hot and they had those yellow fever, other types of fevers. Same thing. They were doing mass burial because first of all, you had fewer and fewer people to do the work of burial and moratoriums and things like that. And they were
They got a
afraid
mass
of getting
burial.
sick.
Well, they got a mass burial at Jamestown, but that's because of a lot of cannibalism
God, that's pretty bad.
and Indians, Native Americans killings, but especially cannibalism. Yeah, it's famous. It's in the history. Yeah.
Yeah, that they
That was Jamestown, the first civilization. I know that the Civil War ones, they died from the war. There was modern ghosts there. There was one I actually helped him over. That was really weird. It was a guy. He died on the toilet. Someone told me after that a lot of people die on the toilet. They think they're going to the bathroom. I said I don't. I said
Yeah,
I didn't want to hear
one
that.
time,
I said I didn't want to hear that now.
you know what? Who was it that told me? I think it was a paramedic one time told me that, and I said, "What?"
I
And he
guess it's
goes,
something that
"Yeah," and I was
they
like,
don't know
"Okay,
what it is at the time, but he
right,
died there,
exactly, yeah,
and his room would be haunted. In fact, things would get lost. They had a couple lost their jewelry, and then they found it in a drawer. The husband and wife were arguing at this point. He was blaming her, and she was blaming, and it wasn't them. And then they lost keys. One of the maids and the head of the housekeeping. Remember what I said to do about talking to them politely, and you might get things back. And because I've done it, it's worked for me even there and here. And she said, "Well, can you please get back my keys. My maid needs to go upstairs and finish cleaning the rooms, and she can't do that without the keys. And she went
Okay.
looking. They had looked for the. It's a very small rooms. Okay, the bathrooms are really small, so there
Okay.
isn't much place to hide things.
Sure.
So they had looked behind the toilet, on the floor, everywhere. So there's nothing at the time. When they went back in, the keys were on the floor behind the toilet.
Right.
So
Like
she did get
exactly.
them
Like
back,
they
and
didn't
was
miss it.
able to tell her maid to go upstairs and finish that. So they, yeah, I taught her. I said, just be polite, because when I had lost one of my stones for the drowsing thing, I said, can
Mm-hmm.
you please bring back? I know it's probably my fault and lost them. It's a big hotel, long distance, but if you find it's in a bag, I'd be glad if you bring it back. And they did, because it wasn't my husband that tore that bag apart. There was nothing in it. That night when I went to do the thing for the convention, I opened up to get my little recorder out, and behind it was the bag with the stone in it. It
Oh, what a
was zippered up.
coincidence, huh?
They put it in there. They brought it
Yep.
for me. And so I said,
Exactly.
all I said was, thank you. Thank you for being kind. So like
Yeah,
I
you
said, they
hear
were
about
really
that. That
kind
that
to
things
me.
reappear in places, sometimes in plain sight, or somebody's looked a million times. So you
I just
know it's not like I
I just
overlooked
told
that.
them, thank you. You were very
Yes.
polite for you. But they knew me every year through my ghost box. It would be Thomas, the head of the Civil War Confederate soldiers from the North. He would say, after the first time we talked, what he liked to eat. He had a girlfriend, and her name was Cynthia up north.
Mm-hmm.
The second time I said, oh, and he says, hi, Pam. I
Oh
said, oh,
wow.
hi, it's my Civil War soldier. I said, you remember? And I
Wow.
said, remember over here? And it was, I didn't point it to Mark, and he says, hi, Mark. So he remembered every
Okay.
year. So the last year, the convention was leaving. I said, this is impolite of me. I said, my name. You say it every year. You're real nice and everything. What is your name? I want to call you by your name before we leave. He said, Thomas. So,
Okay.
but yeah, he was really, really nice. So I always believe if you talk real nice to people, I don't care, they will be nice to you. And like I said, they brought my thing back, and I taught that to somebody. I said, if you're polite, you know, I've had investigators say, well, you have to rub them up. No, no, not really. You think about it. If I'm dead and one of you guys come do this stuff, some of you do, and you want to be pushed over, I'm going to push you over that railing like what's his
No,
face
that
on Ghost Adventures
provocation
wants to do.
confrontation thing, I don't think it's
Because
really a
I
good
mean,
idea.
it's be polite, treat people
Yeah.
like you want to be treated. That's what I was always taught.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 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 That sometimes that I think that confrontation thing sometimes more than not backfires on investigators.
you get them upset. I wouldn't be upset. I would be upset too. I said,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's like
be polite, and
mm.
they'll be polite to you most. If they're not, then that's because that's them, and that's it. So as I said, most of the time, I've never
Yes.
had any problems. So
You got to give them a chance. Pamela, for my podcast listeners, what is the website that they can find you at?
https PamelaKKinney.com. That's P
Right.
A
You use your
M.
middle initial on your URL then, right? That
Right. It's
Pamela K. Kinney.
PAMELAKKINNEY.
Right.
There's two Ks. A lot of people seem to
Right. That's what I
thinking.
wanted to make sure people understood. It has been absolutely wonderful to speak with you again. And man, you're busy. You've got,
I like to
you've
write,
got two
so
books coming out this year. You've got another one in the works. It's like,
yeah. I got two actually in the works. One's making me write the other one, and I'm thinking of connecting that to the Nowhere Land. There's going to be a series with Nowhere Land. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say what haunts the land. It's not a ghost. It's not a thing.
oh,
I want people to not to be surprised. So
okay. Okay. That's great. So it's going to be a series then.
right,
Excellent.
but psychics
Again,
and paranormal people.
let me tell you something. That's what I personally, I like it. Once you get these characters that you become invested in, that you want to follow, you want to see, what else happens, that
Yeah.
kind of deal. That's wonderful. Again, thank you so much. I want to wish you the best of luck, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. Let me tell you something. That's one busy lady. I'm telling you, I'm a writer. To have all these books, it's people don't realize that the writing is even when you whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but even in fiction, that you can say, well, you can make some stuff up, but still, it it's you know, you gotta, even though it's fictional, you gotta make it work. How's that? Your storyline has got to make it work, and your characters have to be, because otherwise people are gonna be like, I don't understand the story. But yeah, so she's definitely a busy lady, and so I'm, like I said, I'm gonna leave a link to her website down at the credits of the show. And again, you know, it's really funny how a lot of times, you know, some places have urban myths when you or ghost stories that when you start investigating them, you realize, nah, that's not quite accurate. And there's others that when you investigate, you go, man, this is actually worse than what's known out there, either locations or places. And again, I'm going to go back to what I always say. Yes, sometimes certain things were documented, whether it was a murder or if it was a certain family that was well known and they wrote up about. Remember, because you look at some of the newspapers once upon a time, which were the mode that most people, besides letters, became aware of things. They would even write about so-and-so is visiting so-and-so, and so-and-so has just returned from a visit to his sister in Chicago. I mean, it's kind of like a printed version in a very micro, not to the extent of what we got going on where everybody's talking about what everybody else is doing. But anyway, you know, usually, of course, more important people, whether it was on a town level or a national level, they got more exposure. You know, what they were doing, the good stuff and the scandalous stuff. That's why they would take great pains to shield themselves from scandal. Because again, remember, these were the years that scandal on the family would follow it for years. All right. Everybody would remember, oh, yeah, 25 years ago, their aunt, you know, ran after some guy with a knife or something, you know, whatever. Or so-and-so, they ran away, they eloped with, you know, whatever. But by the same token, a lot of stuff, they took great pains to keep it secret. Or it just happened to people that, how's this? That didn't matter, that no newspaper guy was going to run out there and write a story about it. It had to be really something really extraordinary for it to make the newspapers. You know, as far as when I'm talking normally, like a regular person in the town or whatever. And again, and then sometimes things just fell through the cracks. All right. Remember, especially if, you know, sometimes you had towns and then people lived on the outskirts or they had farms or even the bigger cities, you know, sometimes no body, no crime. All right. People sometimes up and left, literally, and then sometimes people up and left. Not really. Where they went to was 6 feet under. And that happened. And I think that sometimes that's why you go to certain places. Not let's say like a battlefield, because obviously in a battlefield, you know, okay, people died here, people were buried here, or, you know, anything like that. I'm talking places where supposedly nothing's happened. And you'll have weird stuff going on in a house. Or like I was saying at the beginning, a whole block or neighbors, and nobody can explain it. And so sometimes things went on there. And I'm not even, and how's this? It doesn't even have to be that somebody was buried there, like in secret, even though that, but sometimes, yeah, one of the things, you know, when I was doing my research, you know, a lot of these little towns, whether they were mining, you know, these frontier towns. And by the way, when I say frontier town, it doesn't even necessarily have to be out west. It could just be anything that's on the edge of the civilization. All right. This could have been the Midwest or whatever, whether it was a frontier town, a mining town, a railroad town, a depot town, whatever. A lot of these settlements, before they even put up some buildings, they basically, they were living on it was like a tent city. All right. People were living out of tents, you know, very nice, you know, sturdy. I'm not talking like no pup tent. And maybe then finally would put up one building. But my point being that sometimes you would have settlements with a lot of things happen, that everything was tent, and then something would happen. It could be anything. You know, the depot that the railroad was going to build here, that everybody moved out here, didn't happen. There was a fire that happened a lot, burnt everything out, and instead of rebuilding, they up and leave. If it was a mining town, the mine petered out. That was the end of that. Same thing. sometimes people got sick. In some cases, even if it was a mining town, it was doing okay, but there was, hey, there's the 40 or 50 miles away, they just discovered a new vein of whatever. And all the people that were there that would make up, they ran over there. So the town would like slowly, like basically disappear. My point being that a lot of these towns that people think of, oh, well, you've got the foundations or there was a house or there's nothing left. If they maybe had one building, maybe it was made of wood, and then the rest of the place was a tent with, in some places they would just build the flooring, but what the actual structure was a big giant tent. That's it. There's nothing to ever say that there was a settlement there and people live there. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depends. All right. And nobody's around. And that's another thing. Not all the time, but many times the majority of the people living there were transients, in the sense of sometimes, especially if they were going there to work, they came from all over the place, all over the United States, sometimes from even other parts of the world, because they were just following work. Or, of course, let's say in the case of a mine thing, hoping to strike it rich. So there was nobody there to even remember people's names, or so-and-so was gone, never saw him again or her again. That's it. End of story. And again, people move on. Fast forward 100 years, 150 years. Eventually it becomes a suburb, or maybe even a small town, whatever. And people build on it. And before you know it, whoa, we got weird stuff going on. Why is that? Maybe they, maybe at some point, let's say somebody buys it and was part of a ranch land that supposedly was a field where all they had was cattle grazing. Unbeknownst to them, maybe at some point that there was some type of settlement out there. All right. Again, for all the haunted places that supposedly the ghost is named as, oh, we know it's so and so, or the other person, or whoever, the guy that built the house. I'm telling you, based on my own experience, there's always a portion of it that the usual suspect is not the right one, or there's more than one. Yeah, there's maybe the one that that there's a big portrait of him hung down in the foyer, but there's other activity going on there from somebody that there's no documentation of something having happened. Again, let's go back. Where was it? I was researching. There was out in New Mexico. Was it? No, Las Vegas, New Mexico. I'm sorry. It was this little town, and they put up some hotels because they had mineral springs, right? And people would go out there, different ailments, some worse than others. And of course, at some point, they were catering to they had different hotels, but mostly upscale. They had race tracks. I mean, it was like, come and take the waters, and be healthy. But they had a bunch of lavish entertainment, right? So one of the rumors going around was that people ended up dying in a lot of these hotels, but they would keep it really, really quiet, because the last thing these hotels wanted was, if you're supposed to, and let's face it, some of these people that went out there were sick. They were like really sick. They had some type of disease or illness that it was terminal, but they went out there hoping, like that they were going to go to these mineral baths and whatever. But anyway, they were saying how these hotels, the last thing they wanted was to publicize that one of the guests had died. Why? Because if you are advertising for people to come and visit, to, the come and take the mineral waters, and then while you're here, we have all this other entertainment. They even had zoo. They had everything's out there. That somebody dies. And the truth is, the person was going to die no matter what, whether they were there or wherever they're at. But unfortunately, the connotation was, hey, if you're supposed to be a place where people get better, people are dying. Point being that sometimes things happen in a lot of places, which is hushed up for a hotel for that very reason. Besides the scandal part, but in this case, the health angle, it was like, no, we don't want, we're not even talking here, hey, somebody got shot or murdered or done away with, or No, it was just that they died, period. Because, yeah, it just doesn't, it's not a good look. So, again, my point being that a lot of times things happen. And how's this? And I'm going to say maybe in smaller cities or towns where everybody, the infrastructure of who lives there, whether it's the law, the business owners, even the newspaper, they're all invested in this community, this town thriving. And let's say in the case of what I was describing here, where these hotels were the draw for people to come to take their mineral baths. Okay, my point being that if something happened, whether it was something weird or somebody died, there was, like, for lack of a better word, like a collusion kind of deal of like, we're not going to publicize this, right? Sheriff, right? Newspaper guy. Yeah. And they were all in it. Why? Because they all lived in that town. They understood if the town or the hotels become known for people dying, we're all going to suffer for it because we all live in this area. We all prosper because this town prospers. My point being that a lot of times things are not reported entirely like that. So, yeah. And by this, I'm not saying anything. Like as in criminal, like, hey, somebody was murdered, even though that could happen. But like I said, just somebody ups and dies, and everybody like winks and nods and go, well, poor guy, he didn't die here, did he? No, one of those deals. And you're not going to publish anything in the newspaper. But see, that was the thing. Sometimes certain articles would be written in smaller newspapers. And if it was juicy enough or interesting enough, then other newspapers around the country would pick it up and run with it. All right. So it was like, you're not even going to publish a local story about this because the next thing you know, maybe the paper for the major city close to us is going to run with it before you know it's all over the United States. Especially if it was a slow news day or if the person that this happened to was even a little bit well known, that kind of deal. So, yeah, a lot of things happen that never have been documented. Or if they were documented, people don't really understand who they were talking about. And I've come across that in my research where sometimes and I look at that, they'll give only initials of the parties, or they'll misprint or misspell names, certain things that I'm looking at this and I'm like, you know what? This was not somebody making a mistake. This was like almost like a purposeful way so that the person couldn't be tracked. That would be, oh, that's so and so. Let's the first two initials, and we'll misspell the surname a little bit. Yeah, that happens a lot. I've run across that on more than one occasion. All right. And so in other words, sometimes people don't realize what they're looking at as far as if they ever did publish something, if they were for some reason obligated to report it. It was, and then of course, like most things, if you're like a normal everyday citizen, nobody cares. It's a blip on the radar, let's say back then, of the newspapers, and that's it. It's over. Even now today. I mean, there's unless you're some type of celebrity or well known, or it's got to be something, some event, a lot of things go unperceived. I'll tell you what, we have a case of a young lady. I want to say it's 2023. She went missing, and they kind of think they know who either did something to her or knows what happened to her, but this person's lawyered up. But bottom line, at the end of the day, when all is said and done, they really can't move forward with it because they've never found her. They've never found her. And haven't found, from what I understand, anything to have definitive proof that this person met with foul play. Like, oh, we found a bullet, or we found some blood, or we found that's hers. Nope. And it's stalled out. And that happens more often than people think, because everybody thinks of the CSI effect where, You know, they're going to find you. Let me tell you, no body, no crime. And not even enough circumstantial evidence to like, nope. And as a matter of fact, today I was talking to somebody. We're talking about this case. And I said, hey, you think this girl, she's ever going to get found? And she goes, well, you know what? Because where I live, there's a lot of big gators out here. That body probably ended up in some lake that's full of gators, and that's it. They're not going to find her. I said, or either that, or they went to some piece of land, dug a hole. That's it. Nobody knows, and it happens. People don't realize that it happens. All right, nobody there to prove one. They can have suspicions and say, well, this was the last person seen with this person, and they could say, well, I dropped her off at the corner. She just left. I don't know what happened to her. And unfortunately, for lack of a better word, this young lady, she kind of led a little bit of a risky lifestyle. As in, unfortunately, maybe, the people she kind of like surrounded herself with not the best kind. So again, that puts like another, that kind of hurts the, I think, investigations, because any defense lawyer could say, even if they say they went after the main person based on I don't know what, but let's say they could probably bring up about 5 or 6 other people that they could say, you know what, it could have been any of these. All these other people had motives, or were the kind that might have done something like gotten rid of her, hurt her, killed her, something like that. Enough, yeah. And that's, I think, why. On top of everything, again, that's modern day, and that's always happened all over the place. The other day, because I always look a lot of what they're being able to do with DNA and cold cases, and they're being able more and more to ID victims. And there was one that was in New Hampshire, and I believe they found a lady with 2 girls in one of these steel drums, and they're finally able to ID one of the girls in there. Turns out her dad, they think that that's the thing, that her dad was the one that did away with him. But the dad, I can't remember his name now. This is something that I saw in passing. I probably was a serial killer who died already. So they're all thinking that, yeah. But I want to say they discovered these drums in New Hampshire, like 1980s. Anyway, and one of the reasons that I remember this was that they were asking, they had suspicions of who the woman was. This was because, remember, DNA really has gotten, and the family said, well, she left with the 2 girls, and she was supposed to be going out to California, and we just didn't hear from her. And well, we just thought she was out there living. And I'm thinking about, oh man, what is that? How can you, like, somebody drops off the middle of the earth, off the face of the earth, and you're just assuming that they're just somewhere on the West Coast. Okay. I don't know. That's pretty, like, to me, it's like, that's pretty bad. But anyway, again, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of weird and unusual things that go unreported, for lack of a better word, that at the end, when you trace them back and they end up causing a disturbance on the paranormal level, that you could research it and research it and research it, and you'll never come up with anything. Sometimes you might, but like, even if you go into land records, or no, you're not going to find anything like that. And I'm going to tell you something. A lot of people make the mistake that if they don't find records, it's tied to Native Americans. Not really. All right. Not really. There's a lot of stuff that happened on the land, like I guess said, that no, not really. Once upon a time, people were buried in pine boxes. All of that deteriorates and falls apart, even if you knew where to dig to begin with. So anyway, guys, I hope you like this interview with Pamela. She's a very interesting lady. Go check out her website, check out her books. Also, Also, sign up for my newsletter on SUBSTACK. Go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com or mppellicer.com or erie.news, and you're going to find everything about all the shows, links to everything, video podcast versions of all the shows. And I will be seeing you guys again soon. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. Until next time.